I think I asked you to buy the chapter-wise paper 5 papers. Chapter-wise, sorry, year-wise. Okay, ওটা লাগবে. For your ETA, regular topic, I don't think কেনা লাগবে because I'll be giving you the ones ওটার উপরে আমি focus করবো. Okay, those are usually questions from 21, 2, 3. Yeah, these 3 years. 24 actually for your self practice. Okay. Right, so let's quickly go through the working of an X-ray machine. Ask আমরা CT scan করবো first and then PET scan. Okay, so X-ray one more time. How are X-rays generated? So the production of X-ray is the production of X-rays is based on one very simple principle. What is it? You have to move, you have to stop very fast moving electrons. So when you have electrons moving at very high speed, right, with a lot of Ke, if you suddenly stop them, not stop them gradually, suddenly, what happens is that the sudden deceleration causes some X-rays to come out. It's a phenomena. That's basically what happens when there's sudden deceleration of an electron. It causes the emission of X-rays, and that's what we are basically capitalizing on here. So what we are doing here is we are taking a filament, we are heating up the filament to a very high temperature. Naturally, electrons start to come out from this. The process is called term ionic emission, and as the electrons move out at very high velocity, slow down, and as they slow down here, there's a rapid deceleration, and because of that, X-rays are generated. And these X-rays can be used for diagnostic purposes. There are other features here to improve the working of your X-ray machine, but the main feature that you have to be aware of is what? The sudden deceleration. Okay, so that's how generated. Now, if they ask you to find, let's say, the voltage needed for it to be generated, you can use this relationship here. The K is equal to HC by lambda. The K, by the way, is coming from where? HC by is that only you need to know from. Okay, only equation money from the setup. Now, once the X-rays are generated, they are sent towards the body, and as they go through the body, we learn that different density material absorbs X-rays, and the fact that bones absorb the most and rest of them don't really absorb is what we use to create the images that you see. And the other thing is right, so the other thing we saw last class are different words out there. So I'll be telling you some words, so I'm going to get to explain what they are. What is, in context of X-rays, the meaning of contrast? No, ulta. More black becomes more black, white becomes more white. Contrast, when the difference is more, right? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Good thing, because tomar image sharp and clear as well. So if you see the one on the right, that's an image with very good contrast, right? Arekta jinish hocche jeta hoy is hardness. Hardness is basically edges gulo ki clear naki. A clear edges power jonno you need to make sure that there's no scattering. I forgot to say the word last class one. X-ray edik odik chole jay na, otake bola scattering. So if you want to prevent scattering of X-rays, what do we use? That lead filter, the lead collimator. So if you use a lead collimator, তাহলে scattering-টা কম হবে, scattering-টা কম হলে this is okay. So if you want to do a clean, sharp X-ray, 3 things should be taken into account. Ekta hocche your X-ray needs to be of high intensity. Why is that so? So that it can go through the tissues and the muscle, but can't go to the bone, which will create like these places that are very dark and bone jagagulo very white, which means it improves the contrast, right? On top of that, I don't want the shadowy image where it looks a little blurred, which is generally due to scattering. We use the lead collimator out there. And sometimes there's no bone out there, but you still want to do an X-ray, right? For example, the lining of your stomach. We provide a liquid into the body. It's called the barium sulfate, right? And that barium sulfate basically is known as what? The contrast medium. It generates a contrast, right? So as it goes to your foot pipe and everything, it creates a layer here, and that reveals the structure of what you're trying to do. Modern day X-rays, and it is they want to, for example, find structures in your vein. blood vessels, right? You can actually do that. You can actually find veins using X-rays. How do they do this? Right. So what they do is they inject a dye into your blood. It's not barium sulfate, but it's a heavy metal drug, like and as that dye passes through the different veins in your body, the veins in your body start to appear what? Dark in your, like, they block the X-rays, and as a consequence, they appear in your X-rays. আচ্ছা, so এটা হচ্ছে contrasting medium দিয়ে করা হয়. এটা typically there are better ways of doing this, but yeah, this is what they do. So they put a ink into your blood, and that ink can actually block X-rays. And by doing that, they can do this. এটা হচ্ছে it's not considered to be safe. It is safe, but it's not considered to be safe for people whose kidney function is impaired. Because the kidney, if you have learned in biology, filters your blood. And then if your kidney can't filter this thing out properly, right, it'll stain your body, and that's when it becomes harmful. So if you have kidney issues, you can't use this dye. Okay. Right. Anyways, that's what we saw last class. And at the end of the class, so don't worry about it. But at the end of the class, we started this, which was CT scan. Ask a CT scan korbo, and we'll go through the whole process one more time and answer the. এটা is one question, 8 marks. But here's the problem though. Every year they change one word or two word in the question, which means the answer needs to be a little different. So I mean, question idea of it. The most common question you'll find is explain the process of CT scan and how the images are generated. Okay, that's the most stable question. It is like everything covers in it. অন্য ইয়ারে 4 মার্কসের জন্য জিজ্ঞেস করবে explain why CT scan requires high computing power. This is actually part of that 8-mark answer, but it's the last part. আবার আরেকটা ইয়ার জিজ্ঞেস করবে explain how CT scan can allow 3D imaging of your body. Or আরেকটা ইয়ার জিজ্ঞেস করবে explain the process of CT scan, not the like how the image is generated, but how you do it. Scan. So that in it, which can eventually become Okay, show back to screen. Let's discuss this. So right, last class I went through it briefly. I'll just go through this one more time. To carefully know, okay, the process of performing a CT scan, like A to Z key korte hai, okay? So if you want CT scan, that's a very important requirement, okay? So X-rays are limitation of just bones. They're okay in finding bones. They're not very good at it. Because there are certain things in bones that even X-rays can't find out, like hairline fracture. Hairline fracture kind of name tells you fracture হয় বোনটা ভেঙে গেছে, by the way, but it's cut in such a small way, right? You can't see it on an X-ray. X-ray দেখা যাবে the bone is perfectly fine, but it's actually cracked into two pieces. The crack is like hairline thickness. X-ray দেখা যায় না, okay? Also, if you want detailed structure of something, three-dimensional structure of something, on X-ray যেটা হয়, when I keep my arm on the table, right, it's only showing from that angle. Side থেকে দেখা যাচ্ছে না, so you don't get a 3D version of it. না এত X-ray করা তো সম্ভব না, so CT scan তখন recommend করে. So what does a CT scan do? So CT scan দুইটা advantage আছে. It can check any organ if you want, মানে এখানে কোনো limitation নাই, okay? Even the brain can be done there. আর secondly হচ্ছে it gives you a 3D image, and what I mean by 3D image, right, it's literally ধরো একটা object in 3D, right, and then you can take your mouse and scroll around it and even go inside it. And it's not like an outer 3D, it's inner 3D. So once you do a CT scan, right, it's like it reveals everything. The only drawback, there must be some drawback, right? Only drawback হচ্ছে the process of CT scanning, right, takes a very long time. It basically draws, like তোমরা কি inkjet printer দেখছো? বাসার প্রিন্টার দেখেন এরকম করে ড্র করতে থাকে. Basically the CT scan machine scans your body like that continuously, every layer, back and forth, এরকম করতে থাকে. So if you want to do a whole body CT scan, right, yeah, easily 2 hours, 2.5 hours লাগে. আচ্ছা, if you want to do, let's say, a particular organ, at least 45 minutes of lagbe, okay, half an hour lagbe, 20 minutes lagbe, depends on how much detail you want. Yeah, it's harmful, yes. So the difference with X-ray হচ্ছে X-ray তে short burst এ high intensity পাঠায়, এখানে হচ্ছে low intensity দেওয়ার চেষ্টা করে, but it does it for a very short time. So low intensity use করে, which is not good, by the way. কেন low intensity হলে কি problem? Your body absorbs it, right? But we want to see everything. We want some of them to get absorbed, but we do it for a very short duration. So এখানে durationটা দিয়ে আমরা balance করি, because if you expose very high intensity, right, and for a very long time, it's a problem. But it's not one place. ওই জিনিসটা গোল হয়ে ঘুরতে থাকে. So it's not one place 2 hours. It's like your entire body. Okay, is it safe? Absolutely not. It's actually harmful than X-rays, obviously, because you're being exposed to this thing for a longer time, right? But if you do one CT scan, right, it can give you enough information that you don't need to do further investigation. আর লাগে না. এরপরে যেটা করতে হয়, it's like an MRI. MRI এটা হচ্ছে আরো advanced, right? So ওইটা হচ্ছে is harmless, কোনো problem হয় না. MRI has some issues. MRI doesn't give you 3D images. So MRI gives you slices of particular locations. So eventually people use MRI for finding nerve-related issues. So nerves can be seen very easily. That's why MRI is mostly used for the brain. People normally don't do MRI for rest of the body or spinal cord, because there are a lot of nerves out there which show very good on the MRI. The thing is, with CT scan, even veins are not supposed to be seen. How do we make the veins visible? With the dye, right? But the nerves don't, have a circulatory system. So the nerves don't actually capture dye. So the nerves don't show up in a CT scan. So if you want to see something nerve related, right, you have to do an MRI. Yeah. Right. So how do you perform a CT scan? So CT scan করার জন্য last class you guys didn't do it. So I'll tell you the process. You have to describe the process as well. So you need to explain how does it work. You need to explain, how is the computer actually generating the image. There used to be a math. I think it was one math 15 marks in the previous syllabus, my 2017 এর আগে দেখবা তোমাদের পাস পেপারের মধ্যে box দিয়ে অনেক math আসতো, voxels, right? Voxel calculation. So there are like 3D pixels. পিক্সেল চেনো না? সো পিক্সেলটা 2D, লাইক একটা পিক্সেল আরেকটা পিক্সেল আরেকটা পিক্সেল, এই 2D পিক্সেল মিলে 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 কি বানানো যায়, একটা ইমেজ, রাইট? ভক্সেল হচ্ছে লাইক আ লেগো, like Lego piece moton 3D pixels, and you take like voxels and stack them together. Eventually, what do you get? Like yeah, it's there's this thing called Minecraft. ওইখানে যেরকম yeah, it's the same thing. Voxel এখান থেকে আসছে. They use the same concept. It's like basically you're creating something in 3 dimension by not 2 dimensional pixels but 3 dimensional blocks. Okay, ওইটা ম্যাথ করে বের করতে হতো. So আমাদেরকে ম্যাথ করে visualize করতে হতো what the structure would look like. I gave you some hint of it. Remember this last class? This is actually how voxel calculations are performed. It requires extreme computing power. এর জন্য হচ্ছে CT scan takes such a long time, and also it was only introduced in the last 20 years because computers got better. Okay, so let me explain কি করা হয়. So to perform CT scan, there's this machine like this. এই মেশিনটা এটা ফ্রন্ট ভিউ দেখাচ্ছি তোমাদেরকে. এই মেশিনটার ভিতরে পেশেন্টটাকে রাখা হয়. So the patient lies down here, and let's say this is the part that you want to do CT scan, right? তারপর কি হয়, there's actually this thing that moves around the whole CT scan setup. So যে এই জিনিসটা, এটা হচ্ছে X-ray emit করে, and right opposite to it there's a thing that receives the X-rays, and these are actually sensors, not like paper or anything, and এগুলো rotate করতে থাকে at very high speeds around you, and as they rotate around you, what they do is they map your body. So এখান থেকে send করে একটা X-ray, a beam goes like that and goes here. It picks up some information, key information, যে এই লাইনটার মধ্যে কি এক্সিস্ট করে, দেন এই জিনিসটা অন্য জায়গা থেকে এক্সরেটা সেন্ড করে like that, and then something like this, and it keeps doing this from every single imaginable angle, right? And as it keeps doing this, it eventually creates a what of your body, a picture of one single slice, মানে একটা single layer কে সব দিক থেকে draw করে. So imagine it's a person's arm or something. আচ্ছা, so এই জিনিসটা হচ্ছে একটা arm. So armটাকে ওরা কেমনে হচ্ছে recreate করবে? Let me show you. And let's say there's a problem here, like a blood clot or something, right? এটার হচ্ছে diagramটা কেমনে হবে? Like, you know, how do the CT scan work? So if you look at the arm in 3 dimension, এরকম দেখতে হবে. The CT scan machine কি করে? It basically takes images of the arm in what? Slices. Like প্রত্যেকটা slice, each is like a micrometer thick. Slice করে করে image generate করে. And it takes all these images, and what does it do? Stack it together, right? So তুমি eventually কি করতে পারবা? একটা একটা করে image সরাতে পারবা. So as you move the images out, let's say this is the bone and this is the blood clot, right? এটার পিছের ইমেজটাতেও দেখবা যে এরকম the bone and the blood clot, but blood clot দেখো একটু ছোট হয়ে গেছে, আর তার পিছের ইমেজে যদি যাও দেখবা again the bone, and now you don't see the blood clot. So you can see, like, you know, layer করে how the blood clot is, how big is it, what structure it is, right? And it actually যারা কাজ করে, they just move their mouse scroll button আছে না, ওই scroll করে করে just layer গুলো সরতে থাকে, so you can actually go through the body, not the 3D part only outside. You can actually go layer by layer. This tool, like, you know, changed medicine for common people. You can diagnose everything to such detail in very easy একটা manner, কিন্তু it's not very complicated now. It takes 25 minutes to 1 hour to get a full body CT, right? And we can take some of the ailments যেগুলো আগে বের করাই possible ছিল না. Now it's a matter of literally click on a mouse. You can just, you know, scroll and see where this is, right? So এটা হচ্ছে CT scan. Now the way they generate the image, আমি তো তোমাদেরকে বললাম, they take multiple slices, এরকম করে slice করে ছবি নিতে থাকে, and once they take all the slices, what do? They stack them together, and what do you have? Like a 3D image out there, right? Now it's like a color দেওয়া হয়, color গুলো different tissues mean করে, intensity mean করে, but that's mainly the purpose of your CT scan. Now why is it very complicated? Because বলি কি হয়, this machine generates I think I already told you, like gigabytes of data every second, কারণ প্রত্যেকটা স্পিনে অনেক ইনফরমেশন প্রসেস করা হচ্ছে. Then it's sent to a computer. The computer then processes the image and then renders it. Do you know what rendering is? Is to generate the image. A rendering process takes some time, and finally ওই main screener মধ্যে এই 3D টা generate করা হয়. The main function is here, the processing, a graphic visual processing. It uses GPUs. GPU মানে graphics card. ওই যে কার্ডগুলো ইউজ করা হয় ওগুলো হচ্ছে নট ইউর টিপিক্যাল পিসি তে যেগুলো ইউজ করে, দিস আর মাচ হাই এন্ড ওয়ান. এখন হবে, but you need to like put three in parallel maybe, but yeah, I mean this whole thing is like $100,000. So tinta graphics card থাকতেই পারে. So yeah, the processing is the thing. So once you have a good processor, it gets much easier. That's why it's now more accessible. CT scan এখন কিন্তু almost every hospital can do it, right? But 10 years back, there was like 10 in Bangladesh, and 20 years back there was like 2 in Bangladesh, which is right now the case for যেটা আমরা next শিখবো, PET scan. So Bangladesh, there are only 3 PET scan places. PET scan is like much advanced. So it uses particle accelerators in the hospital. Well, in the hospital to create a PET scan. But PET scan can know better. We'll see in a minute. It can find cancer cells. So yeah, that's why it's much more advanced. Right. So this is your CT scan. CT scan diagrams দেখে তোমরা একটা better idea হবে সবগুলো actually দেখায় so ultra we're done with our এটা medical diagnosis processes the ones that you can relate to acha so yeah this is ultrasonography I think we have seen this before so we discussed this so if you see the ultrasonography here there এটা কিন্তু হয় না আচ্ছা এটা something different no this is CT scan but এটাকে হচ্ছে বলা হয় 4D scan it uses like computer processing to create the image absolutely not because what are you a CT scan not ultrasonography it is a CT scan it is ultrasonography I said CT scan oh no তাহলে তো শেষ so as you can see here, this is ultrasonography. I told you ultrasonography produces what? A shadow, right? So it's not really very clear, but it gives you some idea. Next, we'll go to one step further. X-rays, so X-rays যখন করা হয়, that's how it is, right? So it's quite good if you're trying to do like X-rays of bones, it does its job very well, right? So like an orthopedic doctor would just use X-rays for most of the things. They wouldn't recommend anything else, right? But then comes CT scan. CT scan to অনেকের বুঝতে একটু problem হয় because it looks little odd. I'll show you. So yeah, this is how CT scan actually looks like. এখানে হচ্ছে this CT scan is of a brain, right? The CT scan here actually has slices of the brain. মানে তুমি যেটা করতে পারো, you can go like one layer by layer by layer and go inside the brain and find if you're looking for a tumor or a hemorrhage or something, right? ওগুলা বের করা যায়. So yeah, CT scan does that. I'll show you. This is the machine, by the way. No, MRI or CT scanner machine same. দেখতে same. মানে একটা মেশিনে ঢুকে but একটা ম্যাগনেটিজম ইউজ করে একটা এক্স-রে ইউজ করে so that's how CT scan looks like sorry no brain normally extract কেন করে না because the skull blocks everything so কিছুই দেখা যায় না but it's much more intense it can actually go through it is harmful though it's safe it's actually more harmful than X-rays কোথায় CT scan is much more intense the skull is not as thick as your bones it is a bone but it is not as thick as your bone so এটার ভিতর যেতে পারে এই যে এখানে দেখলে বেটার বুঝবা do you see that thick layer outside very bright that's basically the bone but it still goes inside You're taking a picture
We're taking it from this angle,
right
so what if you want to take it from
this angle but ওটা তো 3D তে like এই যে আমি যদি রেখে হচ্ছিল 100 slices করে দেই and I stack the slices doesn't it give you all the access okay so that's CT scan yeah hey, yeah look at this Wait, চলে গেল. The CT scan, it looks something like this. Do you see that 3D version out there? So you can actually see an object or a person in 3 dimension. Typically black and white আসে, but তারপর artificially color দেওয়া হয়. কালারটা দিলে হচ্ছে মানে এটা artificial হচ্ছে, not real color. So ওরা দেখে নেয় muscle tissues পরে ওকে different colors দেয়. For a doctor the color is not really important because ওদের জন্য হচ্ছে এই diagramটা is more important because ওরা এটা read করতে easily পারে. Okay, আর হচ্ছে বলো. No, it weakens. হ্যাঁ intensity কমে যায়. And then by the way এটা কিন্তু হচ্ছে just side দিয়ে দিচ্ছে না. Our brain has an easy access কোন দিক দিয়ে? To the front. So front হচ্ছে you have your eye যে গ্যাপটা, তারপর এই jaw যে গ্যাপটা, এইসব জায়গায় এক্সট্রা easily enter করতে পারে. So they make you lie like this, উপর থেকে দেয় ওরা, ওইখান থেকে most of the information capture করে. And yeah, do you see this red color thing here? What could this be? The dye they use to reveal structures, right? So anyways, CT scan. I mean, the drawback of this chapter is that if you're not going to do anything medical related, right, completely useless thing bolbo na. Yeah, in once in your life you'll probably have to do one of these things, right? So you'll better know that not to do it twice every week. That's just that, right? Huh? Yeah. So I mean, এটা না জেনেও people will do CT scan and be fine. I mean, it's not like you have to know it, but now you know. জোর করে ঠিক আছে, এটা তো করার কিছু নাই. Okay, so that's your CT scan. এখানে আর কিছু এরকম দেখানোর নাই. Basically, the answer I gave you, that answer is all you need to know. Okay. This one. So I'll read through the answer so you know what's written here. So working off a CT scan. Oh, by the way, advantage, disadvantage are a question. So patient is placed inside the CT scan tunnel. The tunnel contains X-ray emitter and detector that moves around the patient in 360 degrees. The X-rays are passed to the patient and detected by the detector from all directions around the targeted area. This information is sent to a computer where it's processed and then displayed on the screen in 3D imaging or 2D layers. Whatever you need, right? 3D lagena. What are the advantages and disadvantages? CT consists of beaming X-rays into the body in multiple angles and collecting data. The data is processed by computer to create many slices and compiled together. The limitation of CT scan is it uses very high computing devices. So, you can't just do it anytime. It requires high computing power. The image generated displayed on a screen and can be rotated and viewed. Compared to X-rays, these are unsafe due to the use of variation of doses from various directions. It's absorbed easily because you want to pick up everything, right? So absorption to hobe. So that's why it's a little harmful. But at a point, they weigh out pros and cons. What is more important? The 10% chance that you might get some kind of cancer 20 years down the line, or do you want to survive the next week? So তখন হচ্ছে ওরা হচ্ছে decide করে will just go for CT scan 2-3 times in a week. Problem নাই. আচ্ছা, they actually do that way now because that's what happens. Okay. Right. So clear about this? এখানে CT scanner আর কিছু না. এটা হচ্ছে যে the 3D version that I talked about. আচ্ছা, আজকে হচ্ছে এই যে এটা. So unfortunately PET scan is newly added. We only had 2 questions so far. So we have to know this in detail because I don't know কি জিজ্ঞেস করবে. So যেটার জন্য what I did was last year I did like a Q&A for this. So what are all the questions possible? আচ্ছা, so এখানে যতগুলো question আছে এগুলা জিজ্ঞেস করতে পারে. So far একটা ওরকম জিজ্ঞেস just এটা জিজ্ঞেস করছে, what's a radio tracer? So let's try to understand what is your PET scan. Right. It's complicated. So I'll explain. You first have to understand particle physics. The accelerating filament, the filament's voltage and the potential that accelerates that. That's the energy, right? That energy controls the intensity of the X-ray that comes out, the energy of the X-ray that comes out. So you can control the intensity of your X-ray by putting high voltage and by accelerating your electrons to a higher energy, because it was QV equals to half mv square equals to hc by lambda. So that QV eventually becomes your hc by lambda. Okay, সবাই একটু স্ক্রিনে এটা একটু এক্সপ্লেইন করি. This is our last hurdle. It's a proper hurdle. It's one of the most challenging topics out there. Last year রাখছে ওরা. So এটার জন্য তিনটা জিনিস আমাদেরকে শিখতে হবে. We first have to understand what is a particle accelerator. So that's the first thing. Then we need to understand what is annihilation. Then you need to understand what is radio tracer. And lastly, tinta mile, we get positron emission tomography, also known as PET scan, okay, PET scan. So that's how we'll be learning this. Okay, so these are three completely unrelated things. They become the PET scan. Okay, so let's first start with this one. It's called annihilation. So এটা তোমাদের হচ্ছে AS এর একটা টপিকের সাথে related. So I'll first go through this one. So do you guys remember we learned about the different particles out there? There were two main categories out there based on the types of interaction. একটা হচ্ছে strong nuclear force or the weak nuclear force. Do you remember what was the strong nuclear force particles called? The particles that were responsible for strong nuclear forces. Question হচ্ছে what particles are responsible for strong nuclear forces? Quarks. Okay, so quarks are responsible for your strong nuclear forces, and there was a counterpart for quarks. What were they? Right, anti-quarks. So anti-quarks হচ্ছে সবকিছু same ছিল except for what? The polarity of their charge, মানে plus বা minus, right? So quark, anti-quark. There was another whole category out there that depended on weak nuclear interaction. What was that? Very good, leptons. And leptons এরও একটা counter ছিল. What was that? Anti-leptons. Okay, now can you name some quarks for me? If possible, all of them. Yes, up, down, top, left, top, bottom, strange, charm, right? Do you remember them? So yeah, these are your quarks out there. How do I represent anti version of them? Yeah, so how do I represent that? Yeah, so anti up, anti down. So upare bar dawa mane hocche they're your what particles? Antiparticles, right? Okay. Now leptons gulo amake reminder diba? What? Oh, leptons. Yeah, so you have your electron, neutron. No, it's not been a year. It's 9 months. I forgot the word. It's called muon. And it's yeah, and tau is right. So tau. So this is muon. Right, and they had anti versions. এগুলো সব negative, by the way, right? Anti version ছিল আমাদের ওই বাকিগুলো লাগবে না, আমাদের খালি এখানে উপরের দুইটা লাগবে. So this one here is referred as the electron, and this is a positively charged electron, which is referred as a positron. Okay, so আমরা হচ্ছে বাকিগুলো focus করবো না. We'll only focus on these two particles because our chapter deals with it. But I hope you understand what a particle antiparticle is. So particle and antiparticle হচ্ছে same mass, same structure, same everything, even same charge. Only difference is the polarity of charge, একটা plus, একটা minus. Okay, now turns out that if you have a particle like an electron and you have an antiparticle of that same particle, let's say a positron, when these two particles and antiparticles come in contact, something happens. You know what happens? Yes, it's destroy each other. Particle and antiparticle can't coexist. So the moment a particle and antiparticle just come in contact with each other, the same type, they annihilate each other. And instantly these masses that you see here conflicts with what? The law of conservation of what? Energy, right? So how is that possible? So the mass is lost, but what is released? Energy, right? And this is where something very interesting happens. Not just random energy is released, two photons are released. One, not one, two of them. Can two photons are released? ওটা আমি বলতেছি. And the two photons that are released turns out to be those of gamma radiation. So the moment your electron and positron annihilate, you have what released from this process? Gamma radiation, gamma burst. And these gamma radiation that are coming out are two photons out there. Now, why two photons? The reason is that you have one electron coming from this side and one positron coming from that side, and their total momentum is 0. According to conservation of momentum, right, you can't have one particle come out, because if one particle comes out, what is that? It's just a net momentum. I need a total momentum of what? How much again? 0. So we have one going upwards with what momentum? Positive momentum. The other goes the other way with what momentum? Negative momentum. This is an important piece of information. So whenever annihilation takes place, gamma photons are released. How many of them? Two of them. In which way do they go? Opposite direction. Let's go. The particle anticle properties don't match. So the moment they have, their fields degenerate each other. So দুইটার field থাকে, field গুলো হচ্ছে interact করে, and one destroys the other. So they just turn into energy. Basically, it makes them unstable. Okay. So আমাদের যেটা করতে হবে না, আজকে এটা করে we'll wrap up, is we have to do this. What's the frequency of your gamma photon released here? Eta ber korte hobe, and it's a 4-mark math, and this is what came in the exam. I really hope it that it's one of the easiest math out there. Okay, so what's the frequency of the gamma photon released in this process? Kemne ber korbo? Yes, very good. So already that's the right equation. So we know that the energy of a photon is given by what formula? Equals to hf. Ekhon, how can I find the energy that is given into this system? Yes, the energy that we get here comes from the what of these two particles? The mass, which is mc square. So this energy is going there, right? Therefore, if I want to find the frequency of the photons released, what should it be? mc square equals to hf. But there's a catch. Catchটা হচ্ছে এটাকে divide by কি করব? 2, because how many photons are generated? 2 of them. So is all the energy going to one photon or half of it? Half of it, right? So আমরা একটা math করে দেখি কত আসে. So these two photons or these two electrons just collided. ওদের কোনো velocity নাই, let's say. So ওদের হচ্ছে mass of an electron is 9.11 into 10 to the power minus 31 kilogram. এটা দিয়ে দিবে ওরা. So let's figure out what the frequency is going to be. So step number 1, I mean, step গুলো বলে দেই because এটা এভাবেই করতে হয়, there's no other way of doing it. Step number 1, find total mass involved. খুব easy এটা. So what is the total mass going to be involved in our scenario? Yes, so mass of electron and positron. They both have what mass? Same mass, right? So it's going to be 2 into 9.11 into 10 to the power minus 31. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is find the energy released. Energy released from the annihilation process. Eta kemne hobe? Equals to mc square. And the mass that you see here is going to be the mass of the two particles involved, right? So that's going to be how much? 2 into 9.11 into 10 to the power minus 31 into 3 into 10 to the power 8 squared. This is the total energy released, by the way. So find the total energy released. Step number 3 is find the energy of one photon. So energy of a single photon. Very good. So যেটা হবে হচ্ছে এই যে ভ্যালুটা আসছে এখানে, we are going to divide this by what? 2, because both of them share the energy in what way? Equally. So divide by 2. That's the energy of a single photon. Last step is going to be that we find the frequency of the photon. Frequency of photon. How do you find the frequency of the photon? E equals to hf, right? So this value that you see here, it's going to be equal to hf, which is 6.63 ওটা দিয়ে করব. So here to last a mathটা করে আমাকে বলবা কত আসে ভ্যালুটা? You can do it. Yeah, no problem. The division by 2 can happen at any step. So this f is going to be this value that you have here divided by 6.63 into 10 to the power minus 34. So both of them, right? No, it's very correct. I'll explain in a minute. It is definitely very correct. Right. Oh yeah, I mean, instead of finding the total, just do it with one. You could. There's a small risk. I'll explain right now. So, but if you understand the logic, you can actually break it down any way you want. কত আসে? 10 to the power 20. 20 হইতে পারে 15, 14 ওরকম হয় normally. 20. Such a problem. I mean, anything above 15 is a word radiation. Gamma. Is gamma's frequency is very high, right? Okay, now let me clarify something. Shobai to screen দেখো. You might be wondering, let's just memorize this value. কারণ দুইটা positron electron যদি annihilate করে আর তো কিছু হবে না. So where does the variation come from? So the variation comes from the fact that I made a very big assumption, which is not true, that the electron and the positron were what initially? Stationary. But the reality is that they actually fly in with what with them? K. And the K that they have will also turn into what? Energy of the photons. So eventually, when you find the final energy, it's going to be the mass turned into plus the what that they brought in, the K. তার জন্য value to fluctuate for it. Okay, so ওরা তোমাদেরকে, so how do you know do they have K or not? They'll use a term, rest interaction, rest annihilation. Rest মানে the two particles are at rest. Very unlikely, but that's what happens. আর যদি K in আসে, you just add their K and you'll get your answer. Okay. In this chapter? No, this is the last one. ওই যে এই particle accelerator design করতে হবে আমাদের. Math নাই, it's theory. For that's good.
53 out of 63.
That's also not bad.
28 out of 40.
28. Yeah, that's the place where you lost it.
If I sat on 6 stability was probably